at Truth Jihad Radio, as always, on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, 1 to 3 p.m. Central Time, right here on AmericanFreedomRadio.com. This is the show where I do try to bring you the most important guests I can find who are supplying you with information that the controlled mainstream corporate media isn't going to tell you, and even the foundation-funded pseudo-alternative media probably won't cover. And today it's one of those shows that could be big breaking news. You know, it's part of an ongoing breaking news story. Dmitri Khalezov has come forward, talked about the essential, for all practical purposes, confession that he got from Mike Harari, the legendary Mossad agent over in Bangkok, Thailand, that Harari, quote-unquote, organized 9/11. Now, people ask us in the 9/11 Truth Movement, how could anybody keep such a secret? How come nobody has come forward? Well, we've got lots of whistleblowers who've come forward. And Dmitri Khalezov, with his information about Mike Harari, could be the most important one yet. Now, we don't know for sure all the details. You know, we're still breaking this story. And it sure would be nice if somebody with some resources behind them in the journalism world would get in here and help us verify these kinds of stories. But I'm not holding my breath till that happens. So we just have to break these stories as best we can, get confirmation on them as best we can, bring on people who know the intelligence community, which is where, you know, these kinds of secrets bubble and boil and fester over the years until somebody finally talks about them. And that's what we're going to be doing today. We're bringing on Dmitri Khalezov for his, second and a half appearance on Truth Jihad Radio over the past couple of weeks. And then we'll have Gordon Duff, who was the main first-hour guest with a little contribution from Dimitri last Friday. Gordon Duff is editor of Veterans Today. He has pretty good connections in the intel world. He and Wayne Madsen are really the two big conduits for leaks from the world of the intelligence agencies. And so maybe Gordon can contribute some perspective about what Dmitri Khalezov is telling us about 9/11, which is not just that he heard Mike Harari celebrating and taking credit for the attacks, but also that he claimed that as a Russian agent, when he was a nuclear person working for the Russian army, he was briefed that there were nuclear emergency demolition devices in the towers in Building 7. And so he thinks that's what brought them down. May or may not be right. Who knows? More research is necessary. Likewise, he argues that a particular kind of cruise missile hit the Pentagon. I believe a Granite P-700 long-range anti-ship cruise missile salvaged from a sunken Russian submarine. Is this true? Well, again, you got to dig it up. You got to verify it. You got to bring on people who know what they're talking about in this world where secrets are usually fairly well kept. And that's what we're trying to do here. I think it is news, though, folks. I mean, we need to be breaking potential 9/11 news regardless of which direction it points, regardless of whether it challenges any previous assumptions we may have had about this issue. If we don't, we could miss something really important. And I think Dmitri Khalezov's testimony, assuming that he can get over and get into court, would be pretty important in any potential 9/11 criminal case. We'll be back in a moment with Gordon Duff and Dmitri Khalezov. I'm Kevin Barrett. You're listening to Truth Jihad Radio. Welcome back. You're listening to American Freedom Radio. I'm your host, Kevin Barrett. My website is truthjihad.com. And we are waging an all-out struggle for truth here. And as part of that struggle, we're bringing you a really interesting show today. We've got Gordon Duff, editor of Veterans Today, and Dmitri Khalezov, the latest and perhaps greatest 9/11 whistleblower. He's certainly got some potentially very important information about 9/11, such as the virtual confession of an organizer of it. That's about as good as it gets. So, hey, welcome, Dmitri. How are you?
Yes, I'm here.
It's great to have you. And welcome, Gordon Duff. How are you, Gordon?
Well, how are you doing today, Kevin?
Yeah, doing great. That's Gordon Duff, editor of Veterans Today. I didn't give you a proper introduction, but we've talked about you and with you before on this show. Well, Dmitri actually is just sending me through Skype some documentation about Mike Harari. Apparently, we've got. Why don't you describe what that documentation is, Dmitri?
I just sent you one file. I think it's complete now.
Okay.
I got this last week from Dimitri, and lo and behold, Dimitri, the sneaky little son of a gun he is, sent me a scanned copy of a falsified diplomatic passport of the operations chief of the Mossad.
Yeah, but it's not the falsified passport; it's the real passport.
Well, real. When it doesn't say, when it has a wrong name on it, it's falsified.
No, he just used a different name to obtain it, but the passport is genuine.
Oh, yeah, well,
okay.
Yeah, it's. I do so love cultural things, Kevin. You're gonna be doing Ringmaster today, which is, we hope will be a lot of fun.
Okay, yeah. So for the listeners who are trying to figure out what's going on here, as we mentioned earlier, Dmitri Khalezov was arrested in the same case as Mike Harari in Thailand. The word is that they were trying to pin selling weapons to Al Qaeda on somebody, and Dmitri has told us on an earlier show that Mike Harari, as Gordon says, operations chief of the Mossad, the Israeli intelligence agency, has discussed, basically revealed to him that he, Mike Harari, had been involved in organizing 9/11, celebrated his success on the evening of September 12, 2001, and now Dmitri has just sent me this Thai passport of apparently Mike Harari. Is that Mike Harari, the guy with the grizzled gray beard and glasses?
Yes, that photo is this is the police photo. This was made during his arrest in Bangkok, and I copied that from the case file in the criminal court.
Right. Okay. Now, we've got Mike Harari's police file. Maybe it's time to make a wanted poster. What do you think, Gordon?
I think it's a pretty good idea. I'd like to think that the admissions that were made here to Dimitri about full complicity on the part of Israeli intelligence in the attack on 9/11 ought to catch some police attention. That's one witness is enough to convict any terrorist in the world that the rest of us know of. And last time you and I talked, Kevin, with Dimitri volunteered to take a lie detector test. Is that right, Dimitri?
Yes, sure.
Why don't you tell Kevin and I about that? Let's go back to September 12th, the evening of September 12th, 2001, after 9/11. What was the mood with the Mossad agents you were with that night?
You see, this was not actually evening, it was morning of September 12th. Because you know that the September 11 morning in America, that is September 11 evening in Bangkok, Thailand. So actually I spent all the night because I was watching all the events in the British pub, because they have a big TV there. So I was watching the September 11 events in live in the TV. And then I spent like this almost all night. And then early in the morning, maybe around 6 a.m. Bangkok time, Harari called me and he invited me to have a breakfast. So, and this was a bit early, like maybe 6 o'clock a.m. And he also told me to go to the 24-hour shop and to buy a couple of bottles of good wine and just to bring it to the breakfast. And the breakfast took place like, I think, 7 a.m.
You had said something about Harari saying this was the greatest day of his life?
Yes. He was almost dancing. He's quite an old man, but he was really dancing at that time.
So he's one of the dancing Israelis.
Well, Harari, as you know, is one of the national heroes of Israel. Way beyond the status of Jonathan Pollard, or he's right there with Moshe Dayan. Who else was at the breakfast? Were there any other Israeli agents there?
No, only me and him and his son. But his son is a young man, so he didn't drink. He was, I think, 16 years old that time.
Did his son seem the least bit surprised that there was a celebration here for the murder of 3,000 Americans?
I don't know, but difficult to say, because his son is is a quiet boy, so he know how to. He's not like his father.
Now, when did you first meet Mike Harari?
I met him, I think I can't remember exactly, but it was in the 2001 in the beginning of the year, a few months before 9/11.
What was when you met him? What were the circumstances? Did he come to you with a business deal of some kind?
Because I used to know some other Mossad agents in Bangkok for quite a long time, a few years before that, and eventually they introduced me to Mike Harari, and the reason was like this, that Harari needed some Russian interpreter because he was involved in the weapons cell, and he needed some Russian English interpreter who understands about the weapons terminology. So that was the initial pretext actually to be acquainted with him.
Well, what did you later learn was the actual reason he'd approached you?
That because we became very friendly soon. The first he just asked me to do some job for him, like to translate and to interpret something relating the weapons. But later we became very friendly, and he began to invite me just like a family member to his breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and so on. And we had a lot of discussions. And during some discussions, he asked me if I and the people in my former service, ever heard about the nuclear demolition idea of the World Trade Center. That was before 9/11, I mean. I thought that was the main reason why he wanted to be acquainted with me.
Now, what we didn't make clear here, and Kevin, feel free to jump in since this is your show, Kevin. But
well, you're doing great, Gordon.
Well, by nuclear demolition. From what I understand, from what I've read, is that there were nuclear demolition materials built into the base of the buildings in the World Trade Center. This is a secret project done in coordination with the U.S. government, and Harari knew about this, and he was asking you if Russia knew about it also.
Yes.
Did Russia know about this?
Yes, definitely. Otherwise, I will not know about it. But as long as I know, that means the Russians know also.
And so this was part of your job. Can you explain to the audience what your job was for the Soviet government?
Okay. When I finished the military college in 1987, I was sent to serve as a commissioned officer to the 12th Chief Directorate of the Defense Ministry of the former USSR. And the 12th Chief Directorate is a nuclear technical service of the Soviet Army, the organization responsible for maintaining nuclear weapons, so it's like safekeeping, testing, production control, and so on. And once I arrived there, I was transferred to some smaller department of this organization, which is the Special Control Service. And the Special Control Service was the separate organization. Actually, it was subordinated to the 12th Chief Directorate, but it was just like, kind of the intelligence service. It was partly subordinated to the 12th Chief Directorate, partly to the GRU, and, something strange. And this organization was responsible for detecting of nuclear explosions primarily.
Now, you mentioned detecting nuclear explosions. This would mean explosions. These weren't nuclear tests, but nuclear explosions that were occurring around the world that none of us in America know anything about or believe were other things.
You are talking about the small nuclear explosions?
Well, you see, if you were detecting nuclear explosions, let's ask this another way. What explosions did you detect or were you aware of?
Oh,
Can you list a few?
Our service detected a lot of different explosions, really a lot. Various.
Can you name some of those? Because Americans will be utterly unaware of this, especially considering none of us have the security level that our own government would tell us.
Okay.
So this is the only way we'll know is from you.
Okay. One of the most scandalous that was detected perhaps was the nuclear explosion under the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. Because the official version that the reactor exploded on its own. But our service actually detected an explosion of a mini nuke under the fourth reactor of the Chernobyl plant. Just for example.
Wow.
Kevin, have you ever heard anything about this at all?
I never heard anything about this. What did this lead to? What do you know who was blamed for it, or what the outcome was?
The problem that discovery was so much politically incorrect at the moment that it was actually shelved. I mean, our service detected it, but the government didn't make any use of that detection. They just proceed with their own story.
Do you have any idea what organization may have been involved with that?
Yeah, I have personal opinion, but that's just my personal opinion. But because the problem is that the detection was, the explosion was detected at that time. It was in 1986, and reported, of course, to the government. But the government didn't they didn't proceed according to this information. They continued to the story that the reactor exploded on its own.
So what is this? This group or individual or whatever that you suspect? Who are they?
I guess that it was some kind of the New World Order project, perhaps by the Freemasons, who used the mini nuke laid under the reactor, and then they pass it for that the reactor exploded on its own, because they just want to kill the nuclear power industry.
Well, it certainly was very successful at doing that. Let me ask you something else here. How about nuclear explosions outside the Soviet Union? How about others?
One of the most famous one, what I heard, because the problem is that I joined that service only in 1987, but I heard it from the operational officers who served before me that they also there was discussion about the nuclear bombing of the Beirut Marine barracks in 1983, the very famous one.
Can you describe your briefing by the Soviet services? Who told you about this, and what did they tell you about the type of weapon they believed was used against the Marine barracks in Beirut?
You see, it was just like a discussion, because the people are friendly there, so they just have like a friendly discussions about that. So just some of the operational officers just told me that that was the explosion of a portable nuclear device.
Now, are they saying that one was used or that two were used? How about the attack on the UN French barracks in Beirut that same day?
Both, because it was the double bombing, so that the two devices were used.
Did they mention the type or size of the devices?
Yeah, that was something like in the 100-ton range, less than kiloton.
So 100 tons or a 1/10 of a kiloton, and the Hiroshima bomb, which is our standard for small nuclear weapons, was about a 20 kiloton weapon.
No, the Hiroshima bomb, according to the statement of the President Truman, was 20 kiloton, but according to the technical documentation, it was about 13 only.
Dmitri, how can you be sure that these are nuclear explosions as opposed to some other kind?
In where?
Well, in any when you're monitoring these explosions around the world.
You see, because okay, I will try to explain to you. Because the nuclear explosions, they have some signature. For example, if that is the underground nuclear explosion, it will send a certain kind of specific seismic waves, which can be detected on certain frequencies, and And this is different from the Earth's waves created by the earthquakes, by the natural earthquakes. So the people who understand about the seismology can easily distinguish between the normal earthquake and the nuclear explosion. Okay, and when it comes to the atmospheric nuclear explosion, they have another signature, because they have different kind of radionuclides and some other things which can also be detected.
Right. So an underground nuclear explosion gives a completely different signature from, say, an underground explosion of other kinds of explosives.
The problem is that you cannot explode really. The problem is that normal explosions that use for, let's say, for mining, they are not in the kiloton range. They are just like a few tons only.
So but you could be sure that these,
you can't compare the yield.
Right. I'm just, what I'm getting at is that you're talking about some relatively miniature or micronuclear weapons, and I'm just wondering if it's possible to tell the difference between those kinds of weapons and conventional explosives.
Yeah, but please try to understand that micronuclear weapons, they are still about a kiloton. So it's a lot. It's like a 1,000 ton of TNT. But the mining explosions, they're just 1, 2, maximum maybe half ton or something like this. It's incomparable.
Well, Dimitri, now you're talking about seismic detection. Now I know the United States has a number of other detection systems, including we have a Vela satellite system that we put up in the 1970s that detects the particles from a nuclear explosion. Does Russia have a similar system?
Yes, but you see, I will explain to you that what you say about the Vela satellite, it doesn't actually detect what you mean.
We'll have to clarify the Vela satellite after the break. This is Kevin and Barrett talking to Dmitri Khalezov and Gordon Duff. Right back.
And I believe it could be something good has begun.
Welcome back. Well, something good has begun today. We've got a great show going with Gordon Duff and Dmitri Khalezov spilling some secrets, apparently, that those of us without high classification rankings never get to hear. Pretty amazing stuff. Chernobyl set off by a mini-nuke. The Barrett marine bombings and the French bombing there, also mini-nukes. Pretty new to most of my listeners, I'm sure. I hadn't heard much about this before. Dmitri, you were just about to explain how the satellite, the Russian nuclear verification satellite.
So the Vela satellite have a little bit different method of detection, because every nuclear explosion in atmospheric condition produces double flash. At the first moment, there is a flash on account of a primary radiation, which is a white flash. Okay, and in a few milliseconds, it will start to produce the thermal radiation, which is of orange color, which is a different physical nature actually. So, for unarmed eye, you can see the time difference between them. It looks like one, but for special detection system, it is possible to distinguish. So the Vela satellite is designed to distinguish like double flashes, and because the double flash is the signature of atmospheric nuclear explosion. You understand what's the double flash? Yes.
Right.
So the first is a white flash in a few milliseconds, followed by the orange flash.
And one of the earlier, more controversial uses of the American system was in 1979, September 22nd. South of Cape Town, South Africa, about 300 miles south, are two little islands. One of them is a volcanic island called Prince Edward Island, which you can find on Google Earth if you're really patient. The United States detected the first Israeli atmospheric test in 1979. Which was estimated to be 18.2 kilotons with a double flash, and the signature was an 80 millisecond double flash. one of the issues the U.S. has as we get into this discussion about nuclear weapons, of course, is that we saw an identical weapon. Our Velis system picked one up in 2009, I believe, May 26th, an identical 18.2 kiloton, 80 millisecond double flash in North Korea, meaning that the only successful nuclear test that North Korea had made was an Israeli-built nuclear weapon, which we believe was manufactured at the Pelindaba facility in South Africa by the Arms Corps Company. One of the things we talked about earlier, and I just wanted to bring this up before I forgot. Probably about 2 weeks ago, and so my plug here, other than I could be selling used cars, but Dimitri and I are both, of course, with Veterans Today. I'm senior editor. He's a staff writer, and wanted to put a plug in for America's veterans. And not just for American veterans, but against anyone that tries to cut their funding, send them to useless and senseless wars, or expose them to nuclear weapons in the battlefield, which we're going to be going into, and expose them to the dangers, the radiation dangers of depleted uranium. That's my plug for today.
Okay.
But I've got to do those things, Kevin.
Well, Gordon, Veterans Today is one of the greatest things to happen to the Internet in the past few years. I think you're doing a fantastic job. And you're breaking this kind of news that we're doing today with Dmitri, and performing a real public service. Hopefully, we'll be able to save some veterans from a lot of suffering if we can end these wars by exposing 9/11 for what it was. Because the emotional impetus that sent all those people over there was, of course, believing that these evil, nasty Muslim terrorists did 9/11. What we're hearing today is that it was very different.
Well, one of the maybe give Dimitri a chance to get a cup of coffee here for a second. One of the things that drove us to getting with you today about the issue of nuclear weapons and how much more commonly they're used than we'd guessed, it's related to about 2 weeks ago maybe, Dimitri sent me a copy of a web page from CNN. About a 1999 apartment block explosion, supposedly by Chechen terrorists in Moscow. And,
no, it was not in Moscow. In Volgodonsk, sorry.
Volgodon? Okay. Yeah.
Volgodonsk.
To all of us, everything's in Moscow. Russia's too big. In reading the article, which Dmitri says was taken off the Internet almost as soon as it was put on, but I have a copy, certainly, and Dmitri saved this. Reading down the article, there's one problem. It's a truck bomb, okay? And this truck bomb, of course, when the Russian authorities are responding to CNN how big the bomb was, they just simply say it was 300 tons of TNT. Now, figure a postal truck. Figure you're loading a postal truck. You've got a ton of TNT about the size of a small automobile, 2,000 pounds of TNT. Now, take 300 of those piles, or between 3 and 5 train car loads, and try putting them in the back of a postal van. This is where we get into the problem with these truck bombs. And the damage that's done to some of these buildings that are obliterated by open blasts. And we'll be discussing several of those, where no conventional explosive that could be held in anything smaller than a battleship is capable of producing that size of explosion. Now, Dimitri, you had mentioned a couple of explosions here, the two in Beirut, certainly Chernobyl. How about Bali? Can you tell us what you know about the terrorist explosion in Bali?
Yeah, about Bali I know really a lot, because I was in Bangkok and it was apparently conducted from Bangkok. Because at that time I was friendly with Mike Harari, as I told you, and with another younger Mossad operative. And these two guys, they traveled to Indonesia about the time of Bali bombing. And they can't really explain to me what they were doing there, because I more or less know about their business, but they were never able to explain to me what they were doing in Indonesia about that time. Okay, this is the first point. And the second point, that that the official culprit who was accused of the Bali bombing is so-called Hambali, the alleged leader of Jamaya Islamiyah terrorist organization.
Right.
Okay, and this Hambali was also the part of the same group, because it was one of the people of Mike Harari.
So you're saying that the group responsible for the explosion in Bali was being managed and operated by Israeli intelligence?
Yes, absolutely. Because the problem is that when that the arrest of Hambali is a very strange operation. The American government promised $10 million for capture of Hambali. And as you know, that Hambali was allegedly arrested in Thailand and extradited to somewhere, I don't know where, maybe to Guantanamo or whatever. So, but in reality, it was just a setup. Because Hambali was in reality arrested in Cambodia and traded across the Thai-Cambodian border for a few Muslims wanted in Cambodia. It means Thais arrested few Muslims in Thailand and traded them across the border to Hambali. So, and now, when they got Hambali...
Go ahead.
Sorry?
Dimitri, one of the reasons we're bringing this up, what type of explosive was used in Bali?
Okay. When it comes to the technical nature of explosion, this was the explosion of a mini nuke also. It was a nuclear explosion.
I had a journalist, I believe it was Joe Vialis, on my show several years ago talking about that, saying that the size of the crater and possibly even some kind of radiation signature were pointing in that direction.
Yes, not only radiation signature, also a thermal radiation signature, because there were half-burnt cars around the explosion, so which is a clear signature of a nuclear explosion.
You had mentioned to me earlier that in your dealings with Mike Harari, that you suspected that he might be looking for you as a fall guy or patsy for this, to be blamed for this explosion in Bali. Is this true?
Yes, exactly. In fact, I was arrested after that. I was arrested as an accomplice of Hambali.
Oh my heavens! Tell us about that.
Okay, the American government accused me of being an accomplice of Hambali and requested the Thai government to arrest me and extradite me to America. So, and
now let's just jump in the middle of this. And of course, the only use you would have to anyone, your personal skill level, is that you're a specialist in nuclear explosions.
Yes, apparently, and not only this. After that, I remember that the people from Mossad, in a few instances before that, attempted to implicate me, in the trade of the nuclear materials and the nuclear weapons and something like this. Actually, I never participated in that, but I see that the attempts, they always tried to make me to touch that things before.
So, Kevin, since grilling you on this, what I'm getting from this, more or less, is the fact that the United States had Dmitri arrested, tied to the Bangkok attack, would mean that the U.S. pretty much openly to anyone who watches these kinds of things, as soon as they saw Dimitri's name on it, Dimitri's name says nuclear weapon.
Well, that's right, and that would explain why they probably couldn't push this into a public prosecution or anything like that. Well, Dimitri, how long did this case last? Were you actually incarcerated, and how long did it take to clear that up?
I stayed in prison about 1 year and 1 month, but the extradition charges were dropped eventually.
Wow.
Which reminds me about your extensive record of interaction with law enforcement. When were you picked up with Mike Harari?
Mike Harari was arrested, I think, 12th of October 2003. And I was arrested actually 2 times. The first time I was arrested in 13th 13th of August 2003. But at that time, I just paid money to the police and they closed the case on the spot. And the second time they arrested me 6th of November 2003.
So just a few days after they had arrested Mike Harari.
No, the first time they arrested me before. You know, Hambali was arrested 11th of August in Thailand.
Yes.
11th of August 2003. And I was arrested 13th of August, just 2 days after Hambali.
But your second arrest was in November.
Yeah, but no, during the first arrest, I just bribed the police. I just paid them $30,000 and they released me. But the second time they arrested me 6th of November. But Harari was arrested 12th of October.
Well, tell us what Harari was arrested for.
He was arrested for terrorism, for creating the Al-Qaeda cells and so on.
Now, wait, you're saying that the government of Thailand arrested Mossad operations chief Mike Harari for creating Al-Qaeda terror cells?
Yeah, but the problem is that Mike Harari didn't use his Israeli name when living in Bangkok. He was using the name of Dr. Haji Mohammed Husseini, so he was arrested under this name.
So you're saying that the Mossad operations chief was arrested, was arrested for being, what was the name of this doctor again? Give us this name slowly here. What was his cover name now?
Dr. Haji Mohammed Husseini.
Dr. Majid Husseini.
No.
Haji.
Yeah, you do that. You've got a doctorate in this stuff, Kevin.
Yeah.
Of his passport, you can see that.
Yeah, it's on the passport in Thai though. But yeah, what you said was Dr. Haji Mohammed Husseini.
Yes.
How long did it take for them to figure out, Dimitri, that they were holding one of the heads of the Mossad and a hero of the state of Israel?
You mean for the Thai police?
Yes.
I think they know it immediately because Mike Harari is very famous. I think it's not a big secret. Because
how long did they keep Mike Harari locked up?
I'm not quite sure because I was not a witness of his arrest, but I guess a couple of days. And after that, he signed all the confessions, and they released him on bail pending the trial.
Okay, well, we'll pick up the Mossad operations chief arrested in Thailand for false flag terror in just a moment. I'm Kevin Barrett. This is Truth Jihad Radio. This is Truth Jihad Radio. You're listening to AmericanFreedomRadio.com. I'm Kevin Barrett, talking right now with Dmitri Khalezov and Gordon Duff, editor of VeteransToday.com. Dmitri, you were just talking about how you were arrested twice in the same time frame, August through October 2003, I believe, and that a certain Dr. Haji Mohammed Husseini, which was the alias of the legendary Mossad operations chief Mike Harari, was arrested on October 12th in connection with the Bali bombings. This is all 2003, that's right?
Yes.
Okay, and you said that Dr. Haji Mohammed Husseini, a.k.a. Mike Harari, was quickly recognized by the Thai government and released within a couple of days. But you said he signed a confession or something?
You see, the problem is that he was arrested not as Mike Harari. He was arrested as Dr. Haji Mohammed Husseini, the eldest terrorist and the creator of all Al-Qaeda cells in the Southeast Asia. So apparently when he signed confessions like that, it has nothing to do with Mike Harari according to the documents. Okay?
So there's a signature of Dr. Husseini on the confession.
He signed all confessions. And of course, we have a copy of Mike Harari's passport using that name.
Yes.
And Kevin, you've got that passport scan there with you, don't you?
You know, I don't think I have the passport yet, but Dimitri will be sending that shortly. We're going to wait till after the show because it might interfere with transmissions.
Okay. One of the things I guess I should have mentioned a couple of minutes ago, here in the U.S., we've had a nuclear scare based on a news video that came out of San Diego. Have you seen that yet, Kevin?
That's right. Yes, there's a customs agent or a port authority guy who says that WMD has come into the country.
Yeah, and that's gone. Of course, that's viral. This is only about a week old, so we have a fresh threat here that one of our customs agents has told us that nuclear weapons have come into the United States to be used by terrorists. Did it seem like there was something disingenuous about the way he accidentally let that out?
It looked pretty phony to me. Yeah, he basically let spill that there'd been WMD, and then the journalist asked if there were nuclear weapons, and at that point, the PR guy jumps in and hustles him away. The whole thing did almost, have the kind of a feel of one of these photo op moments. What do you think, Gordon?
I thought I was watching an episode of 24.
Okay.
Yeah, I have to agree with you on that, but it brings the issue to mind. Dimitri, let me ask you a couple of things about nuclear weapons.
Yes.
According to your department in the Soviet military, what groups or nations possessed nuclear weapons that Americans might not be entirely aware of? According to the Soviet government, who had...
According to what we had to monitor, I can tell you, we had to monitor the American nuclear weapons, the British, the French, the Israel, India, Pakistan, South Africa, Brazil, and the North Korea was under question.
Now, let me a name that we haven't heard on this list before was Brazil. Can you tell us why Brazil was on this list?
We had to monitor Brazil.
Yeah, was there a suspicion that they were developing nuclear weapons?
No. You see, the North Korea was under question mark, so we were not sure if they have or not, but we were sure that Brazil have.
Kevin, do you want to take that one, please?
Yeah. That's. I'm sure most of my audience has never heard that Brazil has nuclear weapons. What was the evidence for that?
It was just like established fact. As I explained to you, that when it comes to the North Korea, we were not sure. So it means it was like under question. But it was potentially dangerous. That's why we had to monitor, just in case. But about Brazil, there was no question. It was an established fact that Brazil possessed nuclear weapons, clear.
Now, had they developed them themselves, or had they bought them somewhere?
No, they developed on their own.
Very interesting. Gordon, had you heard about this before?
Actually, yes. That a group out of a dangerous country to the north of us had helped them develop nuclear weapons. A country we know of as Canada.
Really?
Oh, yes.
So what was the impetus for that?
Money. Dimitri, was there any evidence of Brazil having tested a nuclear weapon?
I never heard about their testing, but I heard that they have it.
Any idea of the estimates? Now, this is going back a ways, but let's say 1991, 1992. Well, what was the estimate that the Soviet Union had of the nuclear arsenal of Brazil?
Maybe a few pieces, maybe 20 pieces, something like that.
Any idea of type of weapon? I know that the Soviet Union had an unusually able intelligence network. Are you able to tell us any of?
I heard that they had the uranium-based, not the hydrogen, just a standard nuclear, the uranium-based, not the plutonium-based.
Let's go back. We've gone over the Bali bombing, your arrests, Mike Harari's arrest, the Mossad operations chief, who under an Islamic name had established Al-Qaeda in that part of Asia. But
I think we'll have to pick it up and move into the next phase of today's show after the break. I'm Kevin Barrett. We're talking with Dmitri Khalezov, intelligence agency whistleblower on nuclear issues and false flag terror, and Gordon Duff, the intrepid editor of VeteransToday.com. Welcome back. This is Truth Jihad Radio. I'm Kevin Barrett talking with Dmitri Khalezov and Gordon Duff. Pretty interesting information we're hearing. That Mossad operations chief Mike Harari, a national hero in Israel, was arrested on the 12th of October 2003 for organizing the Bali bombing, which was done with a micro nuke. Gordon, you were just setting our agenda for this coming hour. You want to pick up where you left off?
Well, we got a couple directions we can go here, but since Dimitri's out there, and I wanted to get as much out of him as possible, you never know when any of us aren't going to be around anymore if we keep talking like this. And I'm trying to make that sound as humorous as possible.
Gallows humor.
Some of the things we need to review here. We talked about the 1999 bombing in Russia, that this terrible mistake hit the papers when the Russian government told CNN that a bomb placed in a small truck had the equivalent of 300 tons or 0.3 kilotons of TNT, which was obviously a nuclear weapon. And then, of course, Dimitri outlined how the Soviet government had detected the Marine barracks bombing, both bombings in Beirut in 1983, as nuclear weapons, how those were detected and verified. And, of course, to Americans who study such things, the Marine barracks bombing in 1983 is known as the largest man-made non-nuclear explosion in the world, which, of course, during World War II, the USS Mount Hood exploded with a smaller blast carrying 4,300 tons of TNT, or 4.3 kilotons. Really, the news could be right about this. It's just that we've developed some very skilled people at putting weapons of mass destruction in trucks. Apparently, we found a way to make TNT become microscopically small. Let's, Dmitri, tell me about the Khobar Towers incident. What you know about this, Kevin? I think you're very familiar with this too, aren't you?
Well, actually, I'm not that familiar with the Khobar Towers bombing. I kind of, at the time that happened, I wasn't yet focusing on this kind of subject matter, and I haven't gone back and done a lot of research about it. Why don't you go ahead and give us your take?
Dimitri, Khobar Towers.
Yes. Khobar Towers was just an alleged so-called truck bombing, which was in reality just usual mini nuke bombing. And as you know, that it was the first bombing blamed on Osama bin Laden, because the previous... That's right.
No, was this what year was this? Was it 96?
Yeah, I think so. 96. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, in Saudi Arabia, for the listeners who aren't familiar with this, these were residential towers for U.S. servicemen stationed over there, and they were supposedly blown up by Al Qaeda because they didn't want American troops stationed on holy...
it's not so simple. It's not so simple. Let me remind you about the history of this bombing. You know that the all previous so-called car bombing were blamed on so-called Islamic Jihad. Okay, it was not blamed on Al Qaeda. And the Khobar Tower bombing was the very first bombing which was blamed eventually on Osama bin Laden. But we'll have to pick that up after the break. We had this very quick break, so we'll be back in a moment. I'm Kevin Barrett talking with Dmitri Khalezov and Gordon Duff of Veterans Today. Okay, welcome back. This is American Freedom Radio. I'm Kevin Barrett. You're listening to Truth Jihad Radio. My website is truthjihad.com. I'm talking with Gordon Duff, editor of Veterans Today, and Dmitri Khalezov from Thailand, an intelligence community whistleblower who has provided all sorts of very interesting information
Well, Dimitri, you were just talking about the Hobart Towers bombing, and after we do that, at some point on the show, we do want to talk a little bit about the evidence for the existence of micro nukes with whatever kinds of signatures that they have and so on. But let's start with the Hobart Towers.
Okay, as you remember that initially this Hobart Tower bombing was blamed on so-called Saudi Hezbollah. And later they changed that story and they begin to blame it on Osama bin Laden. So that was actually the first bombing blamed on Osama.
Right.
And this was before we had, before someone had invented Al Qaeda.
Yes.
As for the bombing, how do you know it's a nuclear weapon? What about the damage, or what other intelligence do you have that leads you to believe that the Hobart Towers bombing was a mini nuke?
Okay, first of all, that you can see by the size of the crater in front of the building that the yield that should have been required to excavate such huge crater should be at least 0.2 kiloton, like 200 ton of TNT, and you can have that amount of TNT in one place. So I mean, it could only be a nuclear device. This is one thing. The second thing, that the place of the bombing was called Ground Zero, actually. And this was 1996, so the Ground Zero meaning has not been yet expanded. By that time, it has only the standard meaning, the hypocenter of a nuclear explosion. And the third thing, that the indictment against the alleged culprits of Hobart Tower bombing was accusing them of using weapons of mass destruction. You can see the official indictment.
Now, one of the things Kevin brought up, Dimitri, that very few people in America, and although it may be something you and I are more aware of because of our occupations, but very few Americans believe there are such things as miniature nuclear weapons. Americans have been told repeatedly on the news that the smallest nuclear weapons are hundreds of pounds, fit in huge chests, they have to be carried around, that the radiation lasts for thousands of years, they're easily detected. Tell me, how untrue is a belief like that, Dimitri?
You see, first of all, that the micronuclear weapons have not too much radiation. Like let's say that the penetrating radiation that can injure standing people cannot travel. I mean, dangerous front of penetrating radiation cannot be more than 800 meters from the center. So which is not much. But the problem is that the people who use this type of mini nukes, they don't detonate them on the surface level. They usually dig them underground, like put them in the sewage or something like this. So the penetrating radiation, the initial one, will be stopped by the surrounding rock. So I mean the surrounding soil. That means during the explosion, the radiation effects will be minimized. And when it comes to the radioactive contamination, it's not too dangerous either because the yield is very small. So it could be just like the dangerous level of radiation will subside in maybe a couple of hours. It's not really dangerous.
So where we have this common belief that nuclear weapons are a monstrous and unthinkable thing, the fact that we've developed variable yield nuclear weapons that can be, the smallest nukes, according to you, are equal to 10 tons of TNT. Not 10,000, but 10 tons.
Yeah, 10 tons. That's like the one used in Bali bombing, yes.
And that if these are set off in a sewer, the radiation would only be in the initial area. There would be little or no residual radiation at all. Although people in the area, I would think anyone that was exposed would develop some sort of radiation sickness. Your belief is that the powers that are keeping the use of these weapons from the public eye are covering up the victims of this radiation sickness?
You see, this depends what you call dangerous levels. Like, for example, during the explosion of a mini nuke, let's say 0.1 kiloton, because it is hidden underground, there will be not much penetrating radiation that can injure standing people. There will be little, but not much. So, and when it comes to the residual radiation, yes, there will be some, but it will quickly subside, because, you know, the radiation has property to subside. So in like 2 or 3 days, there will be no more dangerous level at all. And the most dangerous level, there will be only first 2 hours.
So you're saying that a nuclear weapon can be used like as in Beirut or Bali or Khobar Towers, and 2 days later there won't be enough residual radiation to be detected.
No, not to be detected. To be detected, it will remain for a few years. But I mean, dangerous for human health.
Let's talk about one of the things that we brought up earlier. Tell me what your beliefs are about the Oklahoma City bombing.
About Oklahoma City bombing, it's very clear that it was a 0.1 kiloton mini nuke that was hidden in the sewage in front of the federal building in Oklahoma and detonated underground. So it excavated the crater, and it communicated about 30% of its explosive energy to the Earth, creating corresponding seismic wave, which was detected by the seismic stations, and about 70% were communicated to the neighboring buildings. So very clear. It was an absolutely pure nuclear explosion.
Now, I wonder how have all of the governments of the world and the non-governmental bodies, the United Nations and so on, managed to keep a lid on the existence and widespread use of these miniature nuclear weapons?
I think that they are just using the general ignorance of the people. No other explanation. Because you see, I can prove to you very easily that the building in the Oklahoma, there was a used nuclear explosion. If you just go to the Wikipedia article, which is publicly available, you can see that the seismic signal there, because there is official seismic signal that was detected as a result of the Oklahoma bombing. It was, I think, 3.0. And the official yield of the truck cannot achieve this yield easy.
Because that's pretty widely known. I think a lot of people have suspected that there were conventional explosives planted in the building to take it down, so that the hypothesis of a mini nuke is not widely understood by most students of the Oklahoma City bombing.
Yeah, but you see, there is a mathematical proof. It's nothing to do with the conspiracy. Okay, if you open the Wikipedia article, I can quote for you because I saved it. It said clearly that I quote now, the effect of the blast were equivalent of 1.8 kilogram of TNT and could be heard and felt up to 55 miles, 89 kilometers away. Seismometers at the Omniplex Museum in Oklahoma City, 7 kilometers away, and in Norman, Oklahoma, 26 kilometers away, recorded the blast as measuring approximately 3.0 on the Richter scale. Okay, do you know that 3.0? This is the seismic signal which corresponds to the 29 tons of TNT buried deeply underground. So, but the official yield of the explosion was 2 tons of TNT above the ground. So that is the proof it was the nuclear explosion. You can prove it mathematically.
Okay, very, very interesting stuff. Well, do you think it's a time to move to the destruction of the World Trade Center? And because that's where, of course, the 9/11 Truth Movement is full of people who are convinced by the evidence for nanothermite being the primary agent of destruction. It does appear that a large quantity of nanothermite was used, at least according to the results of these studies that have been done, including Niels Harret's paper. I'll be having Niels Harret on the radio, by the way. I believe it's next week. soon anyway. So how do we go about?
Kevin, let me jump in here, Kevin. Back channel, of course, you're on these emails, and it's one thing being an audience listener who doesn't realize that behind these shows are emails with the 9/11 Truth Movement, Dimitri, you, and many professionals. And sometimes they're quite vigorous as far as the area of disagreement. If I were to make one statement about 9/11, I'd rather take Dimitri's evidence about 9/11 being a crime and the admissions made by Mike Harari using Dimitri as the only his evidence is the only admissible testimony of criminal activity on 9/11 that we have after 10 years. We have here on with us the only witness for 9/11, the only one who can say it was a conspiracy, no Arabs were involved, and name conspirators, and do so certainly admissibly by any court, and someone who has the credibility of being involved, a Soviet nuclear weapons specialist who has a proven relationship with Mike Harari, a long relationship with, of course, the Mossad operations chief, who his testimony, Dimitri's testimony, will say was involved in 9/11. The regrettable thing is that the idea of how it was done, the science has taken precedence over the crime itself. For decades, we all listened to scientists, lawyers, whoever, say that cigarettes were not healthy. And all you need is a single scientist, no matter how much he's bribed or how disreputable he is, to disagree with something, and then it's considered, of course, to Fox News or to others, a legitimate controversy. So no matter what is said about the science of proving how 9/11 was done, we have direct testimony as who did it. We know it was a conspiracy, we know who did it, and we have the evidence to bring a court case right now. We certainly, scientifically, among all of us, we have competent scientific authorities that can prove that 9/11 was not caused by aircraft, whether they existed or not, and we all have our own opinions on these things. No aircraft brought down the World Trade Center. 100 aircraft couldn't have brought down the World Trade Center. Perhaps not 1,000 aircraft hitting simultaneously because they did not have the kinetic energy. I don't care if they were going 500 miles an hour or 1,000 miles an hour, or flown by robots or elves or whatever. It simply is junk science. Now, what we do have, and this is where Dimitri got my attention, one of the things that I had not looked at, and this is a question, we'll call it ancillary to the criminal question, and this is part of a scientific discussion, which is opinion on our part. Just opinion. The criminal question is very different. When I see a lake of molten granite slurry, and somebody tells me jet fuel did this, which I can't even use to light my charcoal in my grill. You can't light a hibachi with it because it burns too cool. It melted not just iron, it melted granite, and it stayed so hot that it looked like a volcano weeks later from Earth satellites. Now, Dmitri has come to us saying that the Soviet government had briefed him, and in his area of specialty, that nuclear weapons had been placed in the below the sub-basements of these buildings. When one looks at the context here, and this is going back to, not everybody is aware of this, but the statements made on television by leasing agent Larry Silverstein, the people who say this. But whenever I see molten granite, and I'm not saying that it wasn't both.
Now tell us about the molten granite, Gordon, because even a lot of 9/11 Truth people are not aware of that.
Well,
where do we see images?
I had been looking at the photos, and I had never seen the photos of the crater. And this was one of the issues with the 9/11 Truth Movement, the size of the crater underneath the World Trade Center. And when you look at the surface of the crater, the 9/11 or the World Trade Center was built on granite, and the granite in the base of the World Trade Center had melted. And That's not 4,000 degrees. That's not 1,800 degrees Kelvin. That's tens of thousands of degrees doing that. Dimitri?
Yes?
Tell us what you know about nuclear weapons that were placed in the World Trade Center. And, of course, based on what we've heard over the last hour and a half, we now know that the issue that was important to so many about radiation and why there wasn't residual radiation the way we've been told, how we'd all been misinformed. What we do know, however, is that an awful lot of the first responders are very, very ill for some reason, and so many of them have died. Dmitri, tell us what you know.
Okay, first of all, I would like to correct you, because that thing was not actually weapons, because it was not intended to kill people, okay? It was demolition devices.
We generally don't differentiate between nuclear demolition and nuclear weapons, not to the public anyway. Very few Americans are aware that the U.S. military uses nuclear demolitions potentially to destroy key facilities before they would fall into the hands of enemies.
Yes. So that is the engineering devices. They are not weapons, actually.
Okay. So
Dmitri, estimate here.
Okay.
When did you learn that these weapons were built into the sub-basement of the World Trade Center?
Okay. So
or
I knew from
not
my
weapons, let's call them engineering devices.
Okay. So what I knew from my former service in the Soviet Special Control Service is that under the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center in New York, there were special nuclear demolition devices intended for the emergency demolition of the Twin Towers. And these devices were 150 kilotons thermonuclear charges placed at the depths of 77 meters beneath under the surface of the Earth, or 50 meters below the underground foundation of the Twin Towers.
Okay, and we'll pick it up from there when we come back. I'm Kevin Barrett, talking with Dmitri Khalezov and Gordon Duff, editor of Veterans Today. This is Truth Jihad Radio. Kevin Barrett talking today to Gordon Duff, Veterans Today, and Dmitri Khalezov live from Thailand, where he is blowing the whistle on some information that usually doesn't trickle down to our level of classification. Well, Dimitri, you said just before the break that the demolition devices that were installed beneath the Twin Towers when they were built were 150 kiloton nuclear devices buried 77 meters beneath the surface. And I'm getting responses here on the Facebook page, questions like, show me the documents, show me the blueprints that show 150 kiloton devices under the buildings. Who approved this, et cetera, et cetera. Any response to that?
Yes. I could say that to demand that I show the blueprints from me is not fair, because I'm not the American official, so they should demand these blueprints from the Department of Buildings of New York, not from me.
Of course.
You understand? Because I'm nobody.
Right. The thing is, it's such an extreme concept for most Americans to grasp that such devices would be installed in underneath these buildings. And people here believe that we have a transparent society. And maybe Gordon, you could speak to this issue. Gordon? Well, maybe Gordon's gone off for a cup of coffee or something. So Dimitri, you're describing these devices beneath the towers. And
okay, I will.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, during in the 70s, the Soviet Union and the United States of America signed an agreement on peaceful nuclear explosions. They call it Peaceful Nuclear Explosions Treaty of 1976. According to this agreement, both parties had the obligation to inform each other on all peaceful nuclear explosions. I mean the explosions which are intended for non-military purposes, nuclear explosions. So I guess that in accordance with this agreement, the Soviet side was informed of the existence of these nuclear demolition devices under the Twin Towers.
And the paperwork.
That's how I know it, because I learned this from my former service at the end of the 80s.
And I wonder whether there would be paperwork still around in Moscow documenting this information.
Definitely yes. But the problem is that because the organization where I serve is a secret organization, so the documentation there is classified, apparently. So you can't get it just like published on the internet or something like this. On the other hand, the documentation in America, it was not, as far as I know, it was not classified in the 70s. Because it was just a blueprint, so it can't be classified. And the Department of Building definitely had a copy. And but I guess that after 9/11 events, because it showed to be disastrous. So I guess that they classified it now. But it was not classified. It was not classified before 9/11. That is sure. Because I even remember that they discussed that in the newspapers.
Really? Because I would have thought that if this were public knowledge prior to 9/11, that it would have been quite a topic of discussion in the American media.
It was a public knowledge, believe me. More than that, you can go to the Wikipedia article online, which is a Wikipedia article on nuclear tests. And you will find a very strange photograph which shows the underground nuclear explosion. And you will see the skyscraper built on that photograph on top of the underground nuclear explosion. And this one is just an indication that in the 70s this was not a prohibited topic to discuss. It was even discussed publicly.
Well, this might be a good topic for archivists. People like Jonathan Elenoff, who I'm still trying to get in touch with, was supposed to be on my show last week, and others who are good at going back through newspapers and old videotape and trying to find really interesting evidence. And it certainly would be interesting to find references to nuclear demolition devices beneath the World Trade Center in publications dated before 9/11. I kind of, I have to remain a little skeptical, though, just because with the amount of research that's gone on since 9/11, with the 9/11 Truth Movement pulling in such large numbers of people going through all kinds of research avenues, had this been the kind of big news story that one would think, I'm really kind of shocked that nobody's been able to dig up any documentation. But let's take that as a challenge, folks. See who can check it out and see whether there are any references to this in the American media pre-9/11. Gordon, are you back yet? Hello, Gordon. We may have lost Gordon Duff, but that's not the end of the world, since we still have Dmitri Khalezov, the whistleblower guest, calling in from Thailand. And let's see, there were a couple other topics I wanted to cover, and I guess one of them is the issue of this Russian cruise missile that you say was recovered from a submarine and used against the Pentagon on 9/11. Tell us about that again.
Actually, the missile that was fired into the Pentagon was used as a pretext to demolish the World Trade Center, because the point is like this. When the missile was fired into the Pentagon and found unexploded there, it was with the nuclear warhead. Okay? And the fact that the missile found in the middle of the Pentagon was a nuclear missile was used by some people to convince the American officials in New York that the planes that hit the Twin Towers also had similar nuclear warheads inside the planes, and that these warheads stuck inside the tower, in the upper floors of the Twin Towers, and were about to produce atmospheric nuclear explosions of the high yield, because they were half megaton. That would be enough to incinerate the entire New York. So the American officials took this information very seriously, because the missile in the Pentagon was very convincing argument, and they decided to demolish the Twin Towers to prevent the atmospheric nuclear explosions by those alleged warheads on top of the towers.
Well, Dimitri,
so they used Huh?
This sounds a bit hard to believe because the Pentagon was struck at, well, either 9:31 point something, if you believe the stopped clocks and the research of Barbara Honegger, or 9:36 point something, if you believe the official story. But in either case, a little after 9:30 in the morning, the Pentagon was hit, and the first tower came down. The South Tower came down at something like, was it 10:46, I believe, just somewhere in the order of 10 or at most 15 minutes after the strike on the Pentagon. How could the American officials have reacted that quickly to the strike on the Pentagon?
Because the problem is that this story was well arranged. And first of all, that the missile that was fired into the Pentagon was detected by NORAD about minimum 7 minutes before it actually hit the Pentagon. So you can add to your calculation extra 7 minutes, maybe 8.
Right, but how did they know it had a nuclear warhead?
Sorry?
How did they know that missile was carrying a nuclear warhead?
Okay, I will explain to you. Because the NORAD has an identification for all Soviet missiles. So when NORAD sees that something is flying of this type, they already know this is the nuclear missile.
Okay, so you're saying that they assumed it was nuclear from the moment that they detected it coming towards the Pentagon.
Yeah, because if you imagine yourself in the shoes of the NORAD operational officer, you have to presume that anything any missile that is attacking America is nuclear. It should be. You have to presume it automatically.
Kevin, have I managed to show up again on the line here?
There you are, Gordon. We hear you. Thank you for coming back, or thank you whoever brought you back.
Well, this is life in the technological universe. I'm sorry with what I've missed here. Sometimes it's best to disappear. Dimitri, go ahead.
I was just explaining about the reason why they fired the nuclear missile into the Pentagon. I just explained that they used this missile as a pretext to convince the American officials that there is 2 more alleged nuclear warheads stuck on the upper floors of the Twin Towers. And the American officials just were scared of this, and they decided to demolish the towers to minimize the damage.
Did we, during the time I was in the black reaches of the universe here, did we cover the type of missile and the background on the Granite missile?
No, we didn't. Let's go ahead and do that.
Dimitri, explain September 10th, 2001, and why the announcement about the mysterious Granite and what it is.
Yes, I will explain. So, in just one day before September 11 attack, there was a strange article published in one British website that was claiming, that was just like revealing the information about the Granite missiles from the Russian Kursk submarine. And that was the first time that the photograph of this missile was published, because before that it was a secret weapon and there were no photographs available anywhere. So the first time they published the description of this missile and the photographs, and it was less than 24 hours before the Pentagon attack. And I believe that
was Jane's. That was Jane's Defense that published it?
No, it's a defense publication, and we probably should have gotten you this in advance, but it was another British defense publication. Okay. The Granite missile is a cruise-type missile with a range of 500 kilometers, but a speed of Mach 2.5, much faster, far larger than the Tomahawk AGM missiles the U.S. uses, hardened, one that can be fired in a salvo with distributed intelligence, much of a hive-type intelligence, where if one missile is shot down, the others can reprioritize the targets. Now, these were the missiles that made U.S. aircraft carriers obsolete as far back as the 1980s. The money we've spent in nuclear carriers and the belief that we could project force using these. It isn't just the Chinese that have developed the capability of hitting our carriers. These missiles could hit our carriers in salvo, and we have had no effective defense against anything that fast. The issue about the Granite, of course, is that it resembles the photographs of whatever hit the Pentagon far more than any aircraft or even an American Tomahawk missile or an A-3 Sky Warrior. And the Granite is a very hardened missile capable of penetrating steel and concrete with tremendous ease, something that no aluminum aircraft can do under any circumstances. Dimitri?
Yes, you're absolutely right. The Granite missile is just armored missile that is the only missile capable of penetrating 6 capital walls of Pentagon. Because you know that Tomahawk missile is made from common materials like a plane, so it will just smash flat on the first wall.
And the delightful thing about the Granite is it has a unique spelling, Granite, meaning that any listeners can look this missile up, pull these articles up, and come to their own assumptions. But if one were to watch the Jesse Ventura show on the Pentagon, which is something that I can't say most Americans have, but many millions have, that debunked the possibility that any aircraft had hit the Pentagon. Now that we have witnesses coming forward that said they saw an aircraft actually pass over and beyond the Pentagon. And, of course, we have more than a few witnesses that and experts, and certainly aeronautical engineers from the U.S. Air Force who've said it's utterly impossible not only to fly a plane into the side of the Pentagon, but the 757 is incapable of operating in that trajectory at anything like that speed, not 500 knots. It would have difficulty being controlled at 200 knots. 500 knots, 1,500 knots. We're wondering what had happened here, but we have little doubt. The Granite explanation, Dimitri's explanation for the Pentagon, is elegant.
And we'll hear a little more about it when we come back after this break. I am Kevin Barrett. You're listening to Truth Jihad Radio, talking with intelligence community whistleblower Dmitri Khalezov and Gordon Duff, editor of Veterans Today.
But now, America, your children all are gone. But now, America, your children know you're wrong.
You're listening to Truth Jihad Radio. This is our final segment today of a fascinating episode with Dmitri Khalezov live from Thailand, where he's up to his ears in all kinds of intelligence agency secrets and hopefully getting them all out here. And Gordon Duff, editor of Veterans Today, we were just talking about this unique explanation for what happened on 9/11 that we've heard from Dimitri and nobody else. Dimitri, we only have a few minutes left. Is there anything that you can tell us now that the powerful people wouldn't want you to say? Is there anything you've held back that you want to say now so that there will no longer be any reason for anyone to try to silence you?
Okay, maybe you will be interested to know about the recent extradition case of Victor Boot, who was recently extradited from Thailand to America. The so-called Merchant of Death and Lord of War. Maybe you heard about him.
Oh, yes, and he's considered by some of Wayne Madsen's informants a 9/11 person of interest as well.
Yes, so that because his extradition case took place in Bangkok, I tried to help him in the case, because I also live in Bangkok. And actually we are from the same village with Victor. And I can tell you a few things about his case if you want. The Americans secretly accused Victor that he was the one who allegedly stole the granite missile and sold it to terrorists who fired it into the Pentagon. That is the important thing.
Wow.
So that the United States government...
secretly, not officially.
Yeah, and so we're saying here, despite the 9/11 Commission report, it is also a public position of the United States government that a granite missile also hit the Pentagon at the same time. Officially, that's an American position. Interesting.
Well, we're going to have to find the paperwork to show it that it's genuinely official, Gordon. Isn't that right?
No, it's definitely official position, but the problem is that the American government was obliged to divide its official position into two levels. Public level and level just for the dignitaries. So, like, for example, when the American government is dealing with the former prime ministers or former high-ranking security officials, of course they tell them the truth. But when they are talking to the public, they just say it was a Flight 77.
Well, that's very interesting information about Victor Bout. We're going to have George Mapp Jr., who has done a bunch of interesting investigative journalism about Victor Bout on this very show on Monday. So listeners can and Dimitri and Gordon, you're welcome to tune in or call in then, too. And we're going to be talking more about that case.
Well, of the people that Dmitri is talking about, in Veterans Today, of course, we have General Hamid Gul, former head of the intelligence services of Pakistan, who came out in 2001 and explained how the U.S. government had helped orchestrate 9/11. We also have brought on to Veterans Today the European Center for Counterterrorism, which is run by a number of intelligence officials, including the chiefs of intelligence of Serbia. And they are also quite outspoken, much in agreement with the exact same things Dmitri is saying. And in fact, all intelligence insiders simply heard exactly what Dmitri is saying.
Well, Dimitri, anything else about the Victor Bout case that I'll be talking about?
So the important thing is that the American officials, they have to close the Pentagon case. They have to find some culprit or scapegoat or whatever. And in the same time, the Russian government cannot admit that the missile was stolen from Kursk submarine. They have to make some other story. So they made the story that the missile was allegedly stolen from the Ukrainian part of the Black Sea Fleet. And Victor Bout was allegedly responsible for stealing this missile and selling it to the terrorists. I think it's quite a scandalous, actually, part. But the problem is that the Americans, they don't want to reveal it to the public. They just want probably to make it the case like behind closed doors, similar to Timothy McVeigh case.
And of course, this raises the question of who are, quote unquote, the terrorists. Well,
I'm trying to find out where exactly Osama bin Laden got his submarine. Because of course he had to have a submarine in order to fire the missile.
Is that right, Dimitri? It was fired.
Yes,
it had to be fired from a sub.
Yeah, it can be from sub or can be from some surface ship, but difficult to say. Yeah, because the missile is the thing which fly on its own. Actually, you can fire it from any platform. It doesn't matter. Can be a ship. Or can be
presumably presumably it was fired from some platform in the Atlantic Ocean?
If you want to know my opinion, it most probably it was some innocently looking ship, and the launching tube was probably placed underwater near the ship, I think like this, to imitate the submarine. I don't think that they have to, because to fire it from submarine, they have to make many modifications to the submarine, which is difficult. So that is much easier to make a launching tube, just like repeating the submarine ones, but attached to the normal ship, I think.
And then, of course, the question is, is there evidence of there ever having been a terrorist organization involved in 9/11, the operations of 9/11? And the terrorist operation organization that you're bringing to light here is the one that is headed by Mike Harari, and they have ships and submarines.
Yes.
You're speaking of the Israeli Mossad.
Yeah, but you see, even though that they have submarine because the Granit is a Soviet missile, and in order to be able to fire it from submarine, you have to make a lot of modification to submarine, which I think is very complicated from technical point of view. So it will be easier to fire it from the surface ship, I think.
Okay. Well, we've run out of time today, but I could probably keep going like this for a couple of hours with you guys. It's been a wonderful 2 hours. Thank you so much for your work to get the truth out. If this is indeed the real story of 9/11, it's going to surprise just about everybody, including most of the 9/11 truth movement. Thank you, Dmitri Khalezov. I appreciate your coming on. Take care. And thank you, Gordon Duff. It's been a pleasure as always. This is Truth Jihad Radio. I'm Kevin Barrett, back for more talking about this Victor Bout or whatever his name is, the evil arms smuggler, on Monday, along with other guests next week, including Matthias Chang from Malaysia and Niels Harrit, the nanothermite chemist.